Hello, my name is Jarrett Brown. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience living in Seward, Alaska. So I first went to Seward in 2007. At that time, I was living in Arizona, and I was going to school at night. I was working some shit ass job. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to find a good job there in the summer, just because in Arizona um, the pay is really low for jobs. At least it was then. I think that's still true. Um, but I decided to go to Alaska because I heard that you could make money there. Um, the wages were low there too, but you could work a lot of hours and you could work a lot of overtime. And so I just went online and looked for seafood processing jobs in Alaska. And I had heard about fishing jobs, but I didn't see myself being the kind of person to go on a boat and fish and do all that. That's just seemed too much. And so I found this company called Icicle Seafoods, and or Seward Fisheries they called it at the time. And I applied there. This lady, she called me. I interviewed over the phone, and then I bought my ticket there. I think from Tucson to Seward or to Anchorage, and then I think I took the bus from Anchorage to Seward. Um, and what I was told about the job before I went was that it's a hard job because you're processing fish, so you're doing the same things over and over. You are in a sometimes cold environment, usually a wet environment. It could be very loud because it's a factory, so there's a lot of machines and a lot of noises and forklifts and all sorts of things. And it could be dangerous. I don't think they said that, but I think I understood that. And but I was told that people come for the summer. They sometimes get to work up to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, for several months at a time, which means that they can save money because everything after 8 hours in Alaska is overtime, and everything after 40 is overtime. So if you work 80, 90, 100, 110 hours a week, you can make a lot of money in overtime. And so I went there. I the first couple of weeks I was there, I stayed at this bunkhouse that they have, and it was fine. It had like a little living room area where people congregated, but it had rooms where there were two people in each room. Um, but I got there in April of 2007, I think, and they said it during the summer months, during the high season, that they would charge for people to stay in the bunkhouse, and people who had been there previously had priority. And I was new, so I didn't have priority. So instead of staying in the bunkhouse after a couple weeks, after more people started to come, I ended up staying in a tent. They had these um, platform tents, basically think like a wooden deck with a tent on top, and they had two beds inside each tent. And I stayed in one of those, and that was free. I didn't have to pay for that, but it's still staying in a tent, you know. And but there were other people who stayed in these trailers. They had these old, broken down piece of shit trailers that you would not be allowed to take anywhere, like on a road or anything. But they were campers. They were used by people to live in. And they had an area for the campers, an area for the tents, and then they had the bunkhouse. And a lot of the management, they lived in the city, in the town. It's not a city, it's a town. Has like 2,600 people. And so they would come each day from their houses to the plant. But, I mean, for me, the tent wasn't that bad. It was not very secure. Nobody ever broke in, as far as I know. Nobody ever took anything from me, as far as I remember. But it wasn't very secure. It wasn't very private. Somebody could just come up and open the flap and look in there. And one day, I woke up and I opened the flap to my tent, and there was a fucking moose right there. And then he had a big pile of shit under him. And he just looked at me, and I looked at him, and I closed up the tent real quick and, tied everything that I could. It wouldn't really make a difference. If he wanted in, he would get in. But he went away, and then I was able to go wherever I was going. But yeah, it was definitely outdoors. At night, during the summer in Alaska, it doesn't really get dark. It gets like twilight, like kind of dark, but not really dark. And so, if you're the kind of person who has a hard time sleeping when there's light, that could be hard for you. I didn't have a hard time because I would just cover my head and I would go right to sleep, stay asleep all night. Plus, I was so tired, I think a lot of times that I would fall asleep. But yeah, so back in those days, there were people from all around the world working at the plant. They had a lot of people from Eastern Europe who had J1 visas. There was this visa, maybe it still exists, but I think it's changed some since then. But the J1 visa allowed students to come over for the summer. They were supposed to do some sort of cultural exchange and learn about our country and also work and make a little money. There was very little cultural exchange other than talking to people at work, which wasn't really what they had planned, but that's how it worked out. And so they would come over. I still have people who I met way back then, 2007, who are my friends, mostly from Ukraine, but also from Poland and Czech Republic and Slovakia and other places in Eastern Europe. Then there were a lot of Filipinos, people from other parts of Asia like Thailand, Japan, Korea. And then there were people from Mexico, Central and South America, mostly Mexico. But there were all kind of people there. So it was interesting to, especially at that age, at that time I was, how old was I? 21? Something like that? 20? 21. And so it was interesting to meet people from all over the world because I hadn't traveled all over the world, and so I hadn't met that many people other than the people from different parts of the world who lived in the places that I lived in North Carolina and Arizona. So that was fun. That was interesting. That was educational. But as far as the work, like I said, you can work up to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for months. And we did that the first year I was there. We worked all the time. And I worked in what they call cold storage. But basically it's just the area of the plant where they gut the fish and then process the fish. And they either freeze it or they send it out in boxes with ice. So I was touching fish a lot, was cutting fish a lot, was operating machines and stuff like that. And the supervisor and the lead, they noticed very quickly that I was a hard worker and I was very good, even though I was new. And so they moved me to different positions, and I was a grader, and I was what they call a manifester, so basically a person who helps the production move along quickly and records production, that sort of thing, and kind of coordinates everything and works with the lead to make sure that the production is going well, and the supervisor. But I did that, and those jobs, they paid like a few cents more, like 50 cents more, 75 cents more, but they were better jobs because you didn't have to pull the guts out of a fish all day, or use a scraper or something like that. And I always knew, or at least I had a better idea than most people, what was going on, what the plan was, how many hours we were going to work that day, and that sort of thing. And I got to talk to a lot more people because I got to move around a lot more. Um, but it it was hard because I had worked a lot before because I used to be in tile and marble for a couple of years full time. Before that, I did it on in the summers because it was my family's business. But I'd work 10, 12, 14 hours a day and doing really hard work in tile and marble. But and then a lot of times I would have to go to school. I would take college classes at night. But working in a fish plant, you're on your feet for that whole period of time, up to 18 hours a day. You're moving very quickly during that whole time. It's very loud, and that creates stress. And there's people sometimes yelling. Uh, Sometimes if they're from other countries, you don't know what the hell they're saying, but they're yelling, and they want you to do something, or they think you should be doing something, or they're trying to explain something to you. Sometimes they're just yelling, not because they're mad at you, but just because they have to talk loud so that you can hear them. And then other times they're mad because their life sucks and they're not happy and they're frustrated that you don't understand whatever they're saying. Um, and then like the lead and the supervisor, they didn't do a whole lot of yelling. Sometimes you would tell when they were upset about something, but they didn't yell too much, as best I remember. The lead, he was really laid back. He would just say, "Fuck it," when something went wrong. He would tell you, "Hey, don't do this or don't do that." Usually, he didn't tell me that, but he told people that. And the supervisor, he most of the time just sat in his office and he drew pictures of fish and he smoked cigarettes and he walked around in the plant in the break room and just made stupid jokes, and he was not the kind of supervisor who was very interested in what we were doing. But if there wasn't production, he would get upset if there wasn't good production. But he didn't do much to help. He didn't make us better. But and this guy, his name was Kenny. He was like an old man. He had been there for like 40 years, and he was always talking about how it used to be in the old days and how it was so much harder and there was more work and all of this, and how the company was better because they used to pay. It used to be a employee-owned company, and how he was rich now because the company had been bought and sold, or they had bought his shares or whatever. And but he was well known because he smoked marijuana, and he would talk about it pretty openly, even though at that time I don't think it was legal in Alaska, but he did it anyway. And I remember this radio station that he used to always play. They said, "And now this tune for Kenny over at Seward Fisheries," and they played like a Bob Marley song, and so he didn't hide it. He didn't hide that very well. He didn't try, but he was a funny guy. One time, this guy, oh man, God, he how can I say this? I needed to talk to him, so I went in the door of his office. I just opened the door and walked in, and he was in a compromising position. He was doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing, and instead of him saying, "Oh, Jared, I'm so sorry. I wasn't supposed to be doing this. Can't believe that I did this at work," and but instead he said he got mad at me because I opened the door. I was doing my job trying to talk to him so I could figure out how our production was supposed to be. And he got mad at me, and he was not happy that I saw him doing what he was doing. And, that was very educational and informative because instead of being accountable and realizing that he wasn't supposed to be doing what he was doing, Um, he got mad at me, but that's how he was. But he another time there was a guy who drove a forklift, and he didn't drive it very well. He didn't drive very safely. But one time he was driving with two stacks of these, what do we call those things? Uh, Basically, large plastic containers on top of each other. And so, where he was sitting in his um, forklift, he couldn't see ahead. And he was kind of looking like this and just driving. He wasn't going very fast, but he was going, but he shouldn't have been driving like that. And anyway, I was taking off my gear. We had to wear rain gear in order to protect us from the slime of the fish and also water. I was taking off my gear right where I was supposed to, where you hang it up. And this guy almost hit me. He came really close, like inches away from hitting me. And instead of telling the driver, hey, you weren't supposed to do that, that's not safe to drive like that, you should have turned around and went backwards and then watched where you were going so to make sure you don't hit people. Instead of doing that, he told me, hey, this driver, he's really important. He's really good at his job. It was your fault. And he said, they're going to call you in for an investigation, so you need to tell them that it wasn't his fault. And he said, don't make it bad for him because they might take him off the forklift and then I won't have a forklift driver. And that upset me because he should have been concerned about my safety first and foremost. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. We can figure that out later. We can do the investigation and figure it out. But the major concern should be the fact that somebody almost got hurt and could have even gotten killed. But he wasn't concerned about that. But he, as the supervisor, his major concern was production. And to him, that was more important than me and than anybody else. And just making sure that he was going to have his driver was the priority. But another problem that I had with this guy, Kenny, is that he would ask me to come in early every day and work cleaning and make sure that we could pass the inspection that the QAs did every day. And he would ask me to do other things, move things around and set up production and stuff like that. And then he would ask me to stay late and help finish tasks that weren't completed by people that had gone home, to clean, to kind of organize things, to do a lot of different things. And he wouldn't pay me. And then other times he would ask me to work during my breaks or when we had downtime and everybody went outside and just stood around and we were supposed to be on the clock. He wouldn't pay me. And I brought this to him, and I brought this to this lady in accounting who handed out our checks every 2 weeks, because you had to sign for the check saying that your hours were correct before they would give you the check. And so I told the lady, I said, hey, I can't sign this because my hours aren't correct. And she said, oh yeah, you have to sign it. I said, yeah, but the hours aren't correct, so I can't, because I would be saying that my hours are right when they're not. And then if I do that, then you'll have no reason to fix it because I will have agreed to the hours that were on the paper and they're wrong. And she, oh, you have to sign it. You have to sign it. And she just wouldn't listen to me. And I said, contact Kenny and ask him what my hours are. And then he'll tell you that I come in early every day and I stay late every day, and that I often work during my breaks and during other times. And because he asked me to, he tells me to. And so she contacted him. He said, yes, every time that Jarrett is clocked in, that's what he should be paid for. And so he told me that, he told her that, but they must have had some other kinds of conversations because this continued to happen throughout the summer, and I kept going to them and kept telling them it was wrong, and then they said, "Oh, just wait two more weeks. Wait 2 more weeks." I keep waiting and checking my checks, and it's still wrong, and they haven't back paid me, and it was just a big headache, and it was getting hard to keep track of my time because uh, I was trying to figure out how much they owed back pay and then everything else, and they kept kind of blaming each other. The supervisor says, "Oh, I told her to pay you for everything," and she says, "No, I told him that he needs to put the hours in correctly, and he's not um, writing on the timesheet that you were there those hours." And I said, "Well, what you can do is check my times where I clocked in because we had an electronic time clock system, and I would clock in. So just check that. And if I was not working during one of those times where I was clocked in, you fire me, or you write me up, or you do whatever." And they said, "Oh, we don't do it that way. We just go based on what the supervisor says." And I'm saying, "Well, you guys have to get it figured out because I'm here working and I'm not getting paid, and this is not right because this is against the law." Eventually, they paid me a little bit, but they didn't pay me everything that they owed me. But it was just a headache to get it, and it's something that bothered me a lot because I earned that money. I worked very hard for that money. We weren't getting paid very much in the first place. I don't remember exactly how much it was. It was either $6.25 or $6.75. And then when it's overtime, it's like 11 something, 11.50. I don't know, but it wasn't very much money. But we worked hard for it, and they benefited from it. The company benefited from it because of my work. They were able to make a lot more money, and so at the very least, they should pay me what I earned. And I talked to a lot of other people about this, and some people just didn't realize what was going on, and others said, "Yeah, well, I don't want to complain because maybe they'll fire me, and then I'll have to go back to my country." And then other people just didn't care because they were living for very cheaply. They were saving money, and then they could go back to the Philippines. And even with a few $1,000s in the Philippines back in those days, you're rich. You had a lot of money. You could live the whole rest of the year without working. So some people just didn't care, and other people didn't have the skills to communicate, and they were just afraid to say something because um, they couldn't tell the supervisor, the manager, what was going on, and what their concern was. So a lot of times they didn't. But I worked very hard to explain to people what was happening. And from what I understand, this happened a lot in cold storage where I worked. But in the back dock, it didn't happen quite so much because the supervisor and the lead there, they wrote down the hours correctly. So if you came at 6 o'clock in the morning and everyone else came at 6:30, they would write you down for 6 o'clock. And if you left at 11:30 p.m. and everybody else had already left at 10, they would write you down for 11. So you would get paid. But cold storage, they didn't do that. And part of the reason was because of what I explained. That the supervisor, Kenny, he was just so detached. He just didn't care. But that was a big problem, and it was a big frustration because when you're working as hard as I did, you want to get paid what you're supposed to get paid. Even if not as much as you want to make, it's what you agreed to, so you at least want that. And I went to different people in the plant, and they said, who worked in management, and they said, "Oh, that's not our department, you gotta go talk to accounting." I said, "Yeah, well, I talked to accounting, and she wasn't very helpful." And then I would tell the plant manager, his name was Charles, I'd tell him what was going on. He'd say, "Oh yeah, just talk to Kenny, tell Kenny, he'll fix it, Kenny's a good guy." And, so everybody was just saying, "Go ahead, go to somebody else." And nobody was actually fixing the problem. But let's see. even though I didn't get paid all the money that I earned, um, I got some of it back. Like I said, they ended up paying me some of it, but I had to fight for it. And but I made, I don't know how much it was that first season, but it was pretty good. I mean, for 2007, it's like $7,000, and that was enough. My rent in Arizona was like $250 a month, so I could pay my rent for the rest of the year, and I could uh, buy food. I don't drive. I didn't drive, so I didn't have to worry about gas and insurance and all that. So I could just I could get by for the rest of the year. I mean, I would take part time jobs, but I would have some extra spending money. Is what I'm trying to say. But most people would say, "Wow, for all that work, that is not very much money," and they're right, because if you work that much, you should make a lot more money than that. But I left a little bit early that first season. I went back home because I got um, funding to go to college, and so my college was starting before the very end of the season. The season I think ended sometime in September, and I left in August sometime. But I think that's right. But yeah, so um, there were people in the front dock. The front dock is where the boats that have the fish on them, they come and then they dock, and then people who work on the front dock come and unload the fish, sometimes by hand, depending on the type of boat and the type of fish and everything else. But they unload the fish and they put it into containers, and then the forklift driver drives the container over, and then we process it in the cold storage area. And then in the back dock, that's this area where basically it's like the shipping department. So they take fish that has been frozen, put it into boxes. They take fish that is fresh, they put it into containers, put ice on it, and then take it to a truck and put it in there, and then it goes down the road into another place where it's shipped, usually to the lower 48. Um, and then there was another part of the plant which everybody calls the cannery, because that's what goes on there. They take fish that gets processed, and then they put it in cans, and it gets cooked. And then they seal the cans, and they stack the cans, and they send them to your supermarket, whatever kind of supermarket you shop at, or Walmart, or whatever. When you go in there and you see pink salmon, then uh, that's probably coming from a place in Alaska. Not always, but a lot of times. And it could have come from the plant that I was working at. But I didn't work in that part of the plant very much, and I don't know a whole lot about the operation, other than I know a lot of people worked over there, and they always seemed like they were working really hard over there. But yeah, but I enjoyed my first season there because it was good work. It was hard work, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. And money, like I said, it wasn't a lot, but it felt, you know, like enough at the time. And I got to meet people from all over the world, and I got to see Alaska. Not a lot of Alaska, but at least Seward, right? And it was fun. But like at some nights, not every night, but some nights or some days when we got off early, or some days when we just got the whole day off. It didn't happen very much, but it happened sometimes. Everybody would, not everybody, but a lot of people would congregate at different places near the plant, and they would go up to the grocery store, or this little general store they had called Three Bears. They would go there, or the gas stations. They would buy alcohol, beer, liquor, and then they would hang out by the train tracks, the Alaska Railroad that had a spur kind of in that area, and we would go and We had a whole setup where there were benches, and sometimes people would make fires. And the railroad would sometimes come and say, "Hey, you guys need to clean this shit up and get out of here." And then sometimes they would threaten to have us all arrested and everything else. But we would always go back, and it just kind of worked out that that was our place. And then there were lots of other places in the woods because Seward's a small town, so you can just walk like half a mile, and you can be in the woods. Literally, from where we were, there's like a huge mountain that's I don't even know how tall it is anymore, but Mount Marathon, and there's a lot of other mountains really close by, and of course there's woods, kind of at the base of those mountains. So we would just go up into the woods, hang out by a creek or some other area, make a fire, uh, and just hang out and drink, and get to know the people from the different parts of the world, and tell them about our country, and then they would tell us about their country, and we would talk about different things that were going on in the world, um, and all kind of learn each other's perspective. It was really, really cool and really interesting. And when you're drinking and you're talking, you're having fun, you make friends, and we definitely did that. Make memories. I still have some pictures of some wild, wild nights because I used to like to um, chug liquor. I don't know why. It's not a good idea. But a lot of times I would just drink beer. But if there was liquor there and somebody gave me a bottle or I had a bottle, I would just chug the damn thing. Just straight, boop, 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 like most people drink water. And then, of course, I would be very drunk. I would be basically disabled. People would have to help me home. Uh, and sometimes, even with help, I couldn't get home. But I would get really bad drunk, and I would talk shit, not being mean, but just like run my mouth. And just let loose. We had this guy who was in college up in Michigan, I think. He made a beer bong. So basically, it was like a funnel, and then it had a tube, and you would put beer in it, and then kind of let the tube loose so that all the beer went through the tube really quick, and you would drink it. You would chug a beer, 2 beers, or whatever they could fit in there. But I would fill a beer bong up with liquor, or with liquor mixed with Dr. Pepper or Coke, and I would chug that. So I would drink whiskey usually out of the beer bong, and I would get terribly drunk, really drunk. And I can be talkative when I'm not drunk, but I can be especially talkative if I am drunk. And I got that way. But I was goddamn making everybody laugh and make some people annoyed, but making most people laugh. But just having a good time. And that's what we did. And a lot of other people got drunk like that too. We just did silly things. Like one night, we all got really drunk, and then we went and woke up the lead. Basically our boss. He, not really our boss, but a little bit higher than us. We went and knocked on his trailer and woke the guy up, and he's like, "What the fuck are y'all doing?" And we're like, "Hey, we just drunk some beer. That's all." But yeah. And then I was there again in 2008. I think that year I came down on the train from Anchorage, and I came, I think, in May of that year, early May, and it was another summer where we worked a lot, didn't get paid very much. It was, like I said, it was quick money, but it just wasn't a lot of money, in the big scheme of things. You're not rich. Even though some people who went to foreign countries where things are much cheaper, they felt like they were rich, but whom aren't. And made just enough to have a more comfortable time for the rest of the year. But I think, yeah, in 2008, I worked as manifester that whole time, I think. And so basically, I was in charge of production for cold storage and help coordinate um, where to put everything in the freezers, and if things should go to the trucks after they've been processed, and make sure everything is getting weighed and recorded and all that. So I did that that summer. That was very stressful because the production there is very, very fast. So there's like 3 or 4 forklift drivers. They're all moving around very fast. Sometimes they move things and put them places they're not supposed to be. Sometimes they put things on the scale and then remove it before you write down the weight. That's a problem. Sometimes they just get confused and write something on a box that's not supposed to be on there, or write something on a label that's not supposed to be on there, put the wrong label in the wrong box or on the wrong shipment, all sorts of things. And so it was just like stressful. And then there's like the language barriers, trying to understand what the hell people are saying, and trying to help them understand what I was saying, because they were probably saying the same thing, even though I speak really good English. They were probably like, what the hell is he saying? But we're just trying to all get on the same page, so it's kind of hard. And the goal of the supervisor and the management is just production as fast as you can, but then at the same time you have the QAs who are saying, hey, wait, we have to do this the right way, which is the way we should do it. And there's like, hey, slow it down, but the supervisor's saying, speed it up. You can't do both at the same time. And so people are always stressed because what they want to do and need to do isn't getting done. So that wasn't really fun. I didn't like that. And I didn't like not having the support from the supervisor. And the lead, he was kind of supportive, but not very much. He was really concerned about production, just like the supervisor was, because the supervisor comes down on the lead. But safety, it wasn't a priority for any of those people. It was for me because I worked there and I wanted to not get injured while I was there, but for them it wasn't a big deal. They do have like safety training and orientation, but it's basically them having a way to say it's not our fault. We trained you, we showed you, and but then when it's time to actually put the training in action, they don't want to do it. They're just like, let's go, and so that's very frustrating. And I didn't want anyone else to get hurt, especially if it's on my watch. If I'm the responsible person, I'm coordinating the production, I need to make sure that all the people that I'm working with, even though I'm not their boss, need to make sure that they're safe. Because I don't want somebody going back to some other foreign country and saying, I went to the United States and goddamn, I got hurt. That's not good for them, because they're the one hurt, and it's going to affect the rest of their life, and they're not going to get the medical care that they need, probably. But yeah, I didn't like that very much. But so one thing about living at the plant is that you have to eat there most of the time. So they have 3 meals a day. I think in 2007, 2008, you got lunch paid. It's not free because you earned it. But if you wanted to eat breakfast or dinner, you had to pay a little extra. But what a lot of people would do is, they weren't supposed to be doing this, but they did it. They would cook in their trailers. They had a trailer, or a camper. And they would also cook in the bunkhouse, even though in their rooms, and they weren't supposed to be doing that. They did have a little area in the bunkhouse where you could cook, but you couldn't do it in your room. People still did it in their rooms. They would cook all sorts of things. Pretty amazing, actually, how much what they could cook in a room with a rice cooker and just a hot plate. But they always found a way. And but a lot of times, so I would just pay a little extra every day. I think it was like $3 or $3.50, $2.75. I don't know, but it was a little more every day for each meal. So I would sometimes eat breakfast, but usually eat dinner. And then after work, sometimes I would go to the grocery store and get something to eat. Usually nothing amazing, but I drink lots of Dr. Pepper like always, because that's what I do. I drink Dr. Pepper all the time. Let's see what we got here. And so I always went to the grocery store and bought 24 packs of Dr. Pepper, and I always had them there. And every break, when I was working in the plant, we'd go to the drink machine and buy a can of Dr. Pepper and drink that. Because the breaks are supposed to be 15 minutes, but really they're like 8 minutes because you spend like 3 or 4 minutes taking off your equipment and 3 or 4 minutes putting it back on. So you don't really get the full 15 minutes, but they call it a 15-minute break. And lunchtime is supposed to be a 30-minute break, usually, sometimes an hour, depends on what the supervisor decides. But it ends up being less than that because you lose time taking off your equipment and putting it back on. But I think only a few times I ate at restaurants because everywhere in Alaska, even back then, eating in a restaurant is very expensive. Um, I don't remember exactly how much, but let's say like a cheeseburger back then might have been $15. Now, I mean that's still kind of expensive now, but if if you went somewhere and got a cheeseburger for $15, you'd just say, oh well, that's how it is, inflation. But $15 was pretty expensive back then. I think they said that like everything was 25% more in Alaska than in that part of Alaska than in the lower 48, but I think it was even more than that. But I didn't eat out very much. Can't even remember where I went. I may have ordered food one time from a restaurant. Um, every once in a while, I did go out to bars. There was the Breeze, the Breeze Inn, where a lot of people hung out, played pool, just hung out at the bar. They even had like a area where you could read books. I don't know who reads books at a bar, but they did have books. Um, I think what else did they have? Maybe darts. I don't know. But that was a good place because it was really close by. You had a good view of the mountains across the bay. But Seward was it was a nice town. Like I said, there was only I think at that time maybe 2,300. Now there's like 26, but there was like 2,300 in 2007, 2008, and there was uh, I don't. I'm just making these numbers up. I never verified them, but people used to say that there was like 13 churches and 13 bars, and that was probably true because it wasn't a very big town, but there were quite a few bars for the number of people that were there. Um, there was like the Breeze Inn, and then there was other bars closer to downtown. They had sort of a downtown area, but the plant Icicle where I worked, it was kind of closer to the edge of town. And then there was a bar. What was that bar called? That was a few miles outside of town. Um, that was the best bar they had. What is it? I'm gonna think of it as soon as I finish this video. But that was a great bar. People used to like spend taxi money just to go to it because it was a cool place. Um, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of drinking going on. And I was 21, so I wasn't afraid to pop open a beer, or 12 or whatever, and it was a good time for me. But the town is really nice. It's too expensive for most people to live there unless they're from there and they got a house and that sort of thing, or they have a really good job in management at the plant or some other place. Um, it's not a cheap place to live. It wasn't then. It's surely not now. But it's a beautiful place because there's water all around. There's mountains all around. Everywhere you look, even in the summertime, there's like snow on the mountains. Some mountains, depending on how high they are, but and how warm it's been. But then, like on 4th of July every year, in 2007, 2008, we would pop our heads out of the plant and look, and there was a race where people raced from downtown Seward all the way up to the top of Mount Marathon and then back. And that was on like ESPN. I think they had it on there those years. Maybe they still do. I just don't watch cable, so I wouldn't know. But there was that. Let's see. One time we went to Exit Glacier. Even back in 2007, 2008, they were talking about how um, you know, the glacier was disappearing. It was melting. And so they showed pictures of how it used to be much bigger and how it had just shrunk. And I'm sure now it's much, much worse because that's been more than 15 years. It's been, well, almost 16, 17 almost. And so I'm sure it's even worse now. But Seward was always well known to people who um, went to Alaska on cruises and stuff like that because they have a cruise port there. And it became even more well known. I think it was 2016 when Barack Obama came, and I don't think he spent much time in the town of Seward, but he went outside of the area and toured some. And he also shot a show with Bear Grylls. I don't remember which of Bear Grylls' shows it was, but it was about, I think it was the later one, the one where Bear Grylls took out celebrities and then had them do these little challenges and stuff like that. I think that's the one it was. But let's see what else. Oh, I remember one time me and some friends, we went to a river and we were drinking at the river because that's what you do. And I had some beer and I wanted to keep them cold, and they said, "Oh, we'll just put them in the river." And the river wasn't moving; it wasn't flowing very fast. But what we would do is take some rocks, put them in the river, and then stuff the beer down in there, and the beer would stay cold because the cold water was running against them, and because the rocks were there, helping them stay in place, that they wouldn't move. And so when you were ready for another beer, you could go get another beer. But the problem was that the river rose, and I didn't notice it rising. And then the beer picked up my beer and carried them on downstream. And I said, "God damn, where's my beer?" And they said, "Oh, fuck." Maybe they went downstream. I said, "Oh, shit." And I know nobody drank them. That could have happened, but I know just because I didn't see anybody drinking my beer that nobody drank them. But yeah, I always thought that was kind of funny. But then I didn't go back for a while because after 2008, you know, the economy got bad, and I went to Kansas and worked in a meat packing plant because the economy was so bad. It was a really bad recession, but it could have become a Great Depression, and I thought that was what was going to happen. So I took a job in Kansas because I thought that if if there was a depression, I would need somewhere to work. And no matter what happens, even if there's a depression, you still have to have food. People still gonna eat meat. So I went there. I was right because you know I stayed busy that whole time. We had pretty steady work there, and I worked as a saw operator for almost 6 years. And then I went to North Carolina for a couple of years, a year and a half, 2 years, and I just worked in a factory, or actually it wasn't a factory, it was a warehouse, and I drove forklift and I packed boxes, and but the rent for me was too high. Now it's cheap compared to what I felt like it was then, because I was paying. They said you're gonna have to pay $625. I said, "Oh my God, $625!" But now the same apartment is like, I don't know, $1,600, because the rent just rose so quickly over the last 10 years. But anyway, so after 2 years, I left Charlotte, went back to Alaska. In 2016, I worked at the same plant again, and the supervisor who was there, a supervisor who was there, who was the back dock supervisor, he remembered me from all those years before, and he remembered how smart I was and how good I was at the job, and so he brought me over to his department, which was the back dock, and I worked in the back dock, and I was a manifester, so I was doing basically the same things in the back dock as a manifester that I was doing in cold storage as a manifester, so I was basically just organizing production and making sure everything was recorded and that it went to the right place, and everything like that, and just making sure that the quality was good, and that the customer got what they wanted. So I did that for a while. That season wasn't very good. I have a friend who could tell us exactly, he could explain everything about the season, how long it was, how many days of production, how many hours, all this stuff. But I don't know. All I know is we didn't work that much, and we still work more than most people work, I think, but more than 40 hours a week. But it wasn't like 110 like we did that first year I was there, uh, or whatever it was, 106 or whatever the highest one was that I worked, something like that. It wasn't like that. So during that season, 2008, I went quite a few times after work. I would just go to this spot where there's a little river, creek, big creek, and I would just make myself a fire. We had some equipment out there for grilling, so I would go to the Three Bears at the grocery store and buy some meat, steak or not steak, but usually pork or some kind of sausage, and cook that, eat that, drink some beer, watch the fish swim up the stream. Because there in Seward, when the salmon are running, they're going back home where they were originally born, and so they're trying to swim up the river to get back where they were born. And there's so many of them, and the water's so shallow and they're so big that you could basically just go snag one out. You're not allowed to. It's against the law. You can't do that. But you can do it, or you could just take a rock and hit them. Shouldn't do that either because it's also illegal. But I like to watch them swim. Um, Another thing I like to do was watch for the eagles because there's a lot of eagles there. I think they call it the Alaskan bald eagle, but as far as we call it, American bald eagle, it's just that eagle that everyone knows. With the white head and the yellow beak and the brown feathers. But I like to watch them. I remember one time there was a seagull, I think. He had a fish and he was flying away, and then out of nowhere comes this eagle, and he attacks the seagull in midair, takes the fish, and flies away. And the seagull is just kind of falling around in the sky, like falling down. Seagull didn't get hurt, but I don't think. But definitely got his lunch taken by the eagle. But yeah, I think the first couple of years I was there, I tried to climb Mount Marathon once, and then I was by myself and I didn't really know the route. It's not that hard; you just keep going up. But there's easier ways to get to the top, and also some ways where the soil is better, so it's more stable. And if you don't have the right kind of shoes, you're gonna slip too much. And I think that first year I didn't make it all the way to the top, but I was okay with how far I got, and I just stopped and looked around. But in 2016, I climbed twice to the top, Mount Marathon, and it was awesome. Because it's not a huge mountain. It's climbable or hikeable. Most people can do it. Not all people, but a lot of people. Especially if they have time, especially if they have a good idea of what the best way to get up there is, and if they have good shoes, they can definitely make it up there. But I made it to the top of there a couple of times, made good memories with friends, took pictures and all of that. And it was a great time. But if you've ever been to Alaska, then you know there's a lot of airplanes there, civil aviation, so like private airplanes, because Alaska is really hard to get around because there aren't that many roads. In Anchorage, you can drive around because there's a lot of roads. It's a city, but to go to a lot of the outlying places, the only way to get there is by boat, by train, or by plane. Seward, you can just drive there. It's not a problem. But other cities and towns, and just places where people live, villages, you have to actually fly there. There's no other way to get there. But I always like just watching the airplanes. I would go to the Seward has a little airport. It's small, but I would go there and watch the airplanes every once in a while. And then some people, I think, took helicopter rides. I never did. We thought about it a few times. Me and a couple of friends, we thought about getting a helicopter ride to the top of a mountain and then hiking from there to some bigger mountains. But we never actually did that. If I was to go back, I would probably do that. Because I wish I had spent more time hiking than I did. I spent more than most people, but I wish I had spent more. And I had, just went to the grocery store and got some food and then just spent a whole day or longer hiking. But normally we just went for a couple hours and it wasn't that big. So I didn't get to see, even though I saw a good bit of Seward, the town, and some of the outlying areas, the mountains and stuff, I didn't see as much as I wanted to. Because we worked a lot and, busy doing other things. And plus, I didn't have a car, so I couldn't drive to a place and then hike from there. So that was a problem. But still a great experience. Seward's a great town. If your cruise goes there, then you can ask me a question here, and if I know the answer, I'll tell you. Or I'll tell you where you can find it. It's a fun town. You can walk around most of it. I think in the summer they have a bus too. I remember in 2016 they had a bus. But you can take a bus or walk to just about anywhere in the town pretty easily, within 30 some minutes walking. And yeah, different restaurants. They have bars. They have a library. The library is really good for that size of town. I remember one time, 2016, I saw the governor of Alaska. His name was Bill Walker. I called him Big Bill Walker because he was big, and his name was Bill Walker. But he came, and it was some sort of meeting at the town hall. And I went to that, and I took pictures, and they ended up on the newspaper because I sent them to the newspapers. And for some reason, nobody from the newspaper was there, but they printed my pictures. And then other times I would go to the high school football games. They had them usually, I think they were on Saturdays. But I would go take pictures at the game and then send them to the newspaper. I'm not sure why other people didn't do that, like the kids' parents or somebody from the school. But I would do it, and they would put my things in the paper, and I thought that was cool. But yeah, it was interesting. Oh, and one thing I did in 2016 is I went on a horseback riding thing for a couple of hours one day. They had these stables kind of near Seward, and then they just take you through all these trails all around Seward on really good horses that anybody could ride, anybody could handle it. So that was really cool. And I also took some boat rides. They have like these tours of different islands and different places in the bay and around that area, and around the Kenai Peninsula. And they were like, I don't exactly remember, 5, 6, 7 hours, depending on which one you're going on and all that. And those were really awesome because you get to see places that most people never get to see, except maybe on a National Geographic magazine or on TV or something like that. But they never get to see these places in person, and I got to see them. You get to see whales and dolphins and all sorts of sea creatures. That's really cool. But I remember one time we went to an island. They have this tour where you can go to an island and you have a dinner, and then we had lobster or crab or something. And I didn't think much of it, but everybody else loved it, and we had a good time. But yeah, so what I would tell you, if you want to go to Seward to make money, you can do that, but don't get your hopes up. You're not going to get rich. You can make some. Hopefully you'll work at a place where you don't have to pay for housing and that feeds you. That's good. It'll be easier to save money. Hopefully you'll get to make some really good friends like I did. Hopefully you'll have some good experiences. One thing that I learned is about workers' rights while I was there because of what I explained about how I wasn't paid correctly and there was dangerous situations and different other things that I also kind of described um, that I learned about there. I starting in I had done some education about workers' rights before 2007, but I really didn't know very much. I thought about it. I thought about unionization and different sorts of things that help improve the lives of workers, but I really didn't know that much. But really, in 2007 is when I started learning about those things, and for 15 years after that, more than 15 years, I went on to protect the rights of workers in seafood processing, meat packing, and lots of other industries. I did all sorts of public speaking, participated in politics, I did a lot of writing. I, even went on to get a master's degree very recently here. Um, Went to the law because of my interest in the rights of workers, and I don't know if that would have happened if I would have worked at a different place where my rights weren't violated like they were at the place I worked at Icicle in Seward. Um, my life might have been a lot different. So it is what it is. Uh, but if you have any questions about what it's like to work at a seafood processing plant or to work in Seward or just in Alaska generally, write your question in the comments and I will answer it. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.